Aloha XCFL, NFC West back here. Of course, we're minus Regan because he, of course, is 15 minutes late, and we're not going to wait any longer than 15 minutes for him. So get used to that one, XCFL. But we got Biz here today. We got Pride, and of course myself, Ace, and we're going to cover our next division in the league. We've already covered the AFC South and the AFC East. So did we get much feedback, guys, on where we're going this week?
No, none at all.
Show?
The league did not do their homework.
None. So nobody can complain about where we go.
There you go. They're about as reliable as Regan is today, right? So we got together. We kind of talked about it, and the next division we're covering is the NFC North. So we got Hammer at Bears. Van Flank is, of course, the Packers. Sparty is a big Lions fan and returns to Detroit. And then newcomer, rookie to the league, Heath, will be the Vikings. So to kick off our review, why don't we head over to Biz, and he's going to cover the Bears. Take it away.
All right, let's go ahead and do this. Actually, before we jump in and start covering the Bears, I'm going to take this 30-second plug and just go ahead and say Regal Regan is no longer Regal Regan. We shall refer to him as Wretched Regan. All right.
I like it.
I hope he gets used to this 15-minute cutoff. We may or may not have come to a moment of solidarity as a group from the NFC West to agree. We're just taking that 15-minute sim every time he does this. So, Regan, when you listen to this, you know now.
I don't think that he realizes the level of accountability, and that's the word that will be floated around often, that the three of us are going to hold him to. So it starts now.
Be careful, you guys. You guys are sounding old and grumpy.
Oh, I know. Look out. The Warzone kids are going to be upset with us.
I may be old and grumpy. I'm okay with that. Listen.
I am fine with that. Definitely fine. But anyway, let's get back to our review.
Right. Yes. Now that we've taken that moment of house cleaning is done. So the Chicago Bears. Obviously, every time that we do one of these, I like to talk about what makes this a good CFM team. Why would I choose them? And so the Chicago Bears, this defense is nice. The age isn't where you exactly want it to be, but when you're looking at year one productivity or year one options, this defense is nice. I'm a fan of it. They're stout up front on defense. They run this 3-4. They've got veteran pass rushers. Obviously, we're talking about Khalil Mack, one of the best in the game. Their linebackers are nice, good speed. Their cornerbacks are playable. Now, they don't have the best group of cornerbacks in the league. We're going to touch on that here in a little bit. But I think this defense is winnable. I think you can roll this defense out. It's going to put you in a lot of games to compete if you don't make silly mistakes. And let's be honest, if you're rolling with the Bears and you know you got Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback, you really shouldn't be making a ton of mistakes because he probably can't throw the ball to a 15-yard out. So just go ahead and throw some screens and drags and get what you're going to get, you know? So that's just kind of how I feel about them. Again, defense, let's roll with that. How you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I looked at the roster, and 7 of their top 8 players are on defense. So that's where it leads the way. So I know you've highlighted on the linebackers, and they're good at every level. Up front, the linebacking core, and even the secondary. I know Fuller's a little, he's good enough to use, but you got Eddie Jackson back there too, who's a massive difference maker. So they'll get by with this defense easily.
It's going to be an interesting transition for Hammer, he's a big Chicago fan, big Bears fan, but he really turned on the offense the second half of the cycle last year once he got up those couple receivers. So it'll be interesting to see how he transitions back to a normal team, a stock team, without these receivers flying around making crazy plays. And really, in my opinion, they bailed him out of a lot of kind of sketchy situations on passes that he would make, but his receivers would make the catches, so you can't get mad at it. And now he's back to some stock team, so we'll see what he does with it.
Yeah, and you're speaking about his receivers making plays for him. I think that's really a weak spot on this roster offensively. Quite a few, actually, weak spots on the offense of this team. But wide receiver, they have Allen Robinson. And typically, I'm comfortable when, good gamers can make wide receivers. They can make them stand out. But when you make the mention that, he really relied on his wide receivers towards the end of the cycle to make some of those plays for him, that he didn't have the same success early in, Madden 20 last year because he didn't have the wide receivers, makes me wonder if he'll have the ability to do that in Madden 21, because this wide receiver core is not great. It's just not. It does have Allen Robinson, no true speed there, but he's a great tactician, right? Good catching traffic, spectacular catch. He's got some nice route running. His release is above 92, so you probably shouldn't press him unless you've got somebody great, on your side like Darius Slay, but he's no longer in Detroit. So, those types of things he can do. But after that, it's really a drop off. And what I felt could be a real difference maker at wide receiver for them, turns out they made him into a halfback. Cordell Patterson is no longer lined up at wide receiver. They have him at halfback. Still got superstar Dev, has wonderful speed, but at the halfback position really changes things when I looked at the roster.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. You mentioned that here, in the franchise that I created to show on the stream here. Cordell Patterson's still at wide receiver, but we'll see where he's at after the first roster patch. And I assume that's kind of, we're hoping for some information this week coming up on when that's going to happen and where we start our XCFL franchise. But that would be really interesting to see Patterson at running back with his, 91 speed, 92 excel. More than anything, it might take away a wide receiver option that might be necessary on this team early.
And a faster option too, honestly.
Absolutely.
It's bad when
Absolutely.
Patterson is considered one of the faster options, and we're going to see that theme among the wide receiving core in this division about being, questionable speed. I know looking at we'll cover it later, but that'll be an overall theme when it comes to wide receivers in this division.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Now, as I was looking at the roster, I'm thinking, what would I do short term? And I zeroed in on the halfbacks. I was like, short term, quarterback, obviously, but it feels like so many teams need that. It's kind of an easy out. But halfback, I was like, well, this is a need. We've got to fill this hole at running back. And I don't believe that adding Cordell Patterson changes my feeling on that. Their best halfback, David Montgomery, 86 speed, 82 truck. So he's not fast. He's not super agile. His change of direction is 84, okay? His trucking is 82. So he's not fast, he's not agile, and he doesn't really have power. That's their best halfback.
Would you not roll with? Yeah, that's going to be my question. Would you not roll with Tariq Cohen?
I wouldn't. I mean, he's going to be that third down back for me. I'm not a big fan of running my halfbacks all game with the same halfback. So in my ideal system, I have two good halfbacks. One that's going to play that third down back, or one that's going to play the power back. So I guess in this situation, he could run Tariq Cohen all game and use David Montgomery in power back situations, and maybe that would assist that. I don't even think David Montgomery is good enough to really be a power back in this situation. So I'm looking at the roster. I would immediately go to the admin team saying, hey, I want to move Cordell Patterson back to wide receiver. I think that should be a fairly easy approve. I know we're not big on moving skill positions, particularly on offense, but I think that one would make sense. You can make a really strong argument for Cordell Patterson being at wide receiver. So I think that could get done. And then I would run a search for halfbacks. I think we've talked about it before. There's a ton of teams that have multiple options at halfback. I think you can get a halfback for a fairly reasonable price early in the franchise. So
I mean,
that's what
we
I would
already
look
see
at.
Hines getting shopped around, so maybe there's a connection there with Hines coming over from the Colts.
Very possible. Listen, Hammer, if that has not entered your mind, go ahead and reach out to Sean right now. Do it. Stop the recording. Take a few minutes. Send him a direct message. You don't have to slide into his DMs. That's a little uncomfortable. But just go ahead, send him a direct message. You get something cleaned up real quick. So yeah, that's something that I would do almost immediately. Cordell Patterson back to wide receiver. Let's go find me a halfback. You know, and it sounds like, is that something that you guys would agree with needs to be addressed?
I think he's going to need it. You know, he was he went after Bryce Love really early last cycle, and he relied on him for the entire cycle for running back. And he had a couple other guys that he mixed in there, but he definitely makes good use of the running back. And I don't think that Cohen is really going to be durable enough, like you said, to handle the running back duties that he's going to need him to handle. So
yeah,
I guess we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Now, go ahead, Pratt.
I could see Hammer trying Cohen out to see how he fares instead of going out and moving some of his assets and addressing that position. I'm just more curious how he's going to treat the quarterback position, and if he's going to roll with Trubisky long term, or if he's just going to jettison out and just try to pick up maybe a project or just get to the draft and address it there.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think he waits at quarterback. There's not really a spot to improve immediately with quarterback. Again, Aaron Rodgers is going to be out there, but I don't think you're going to see a interdivision trade with that type of caliber player. I just don't see it happening. So I think he really waits out with Mitch Trubisky. But you bring up a good point. You know, what does he do if he's not willing to move a draft pick to get a halfback, which is going to boost his offense? Is he now accepting the fact that he's not going to compete year one with this team? And if that's the conclusion that he comes to, is he going to be willing to move some of the older defenders on his team and really stockpile some draft picks for the future? I think to build for the future, if he's willing to sacrifice year one, he could move Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks and really get great return out of those two guys if he's willing to sacrifice year one, which if you're not going to get a halfback, got to be willing to sacrifice year one. So how you guys feel about that?
I don't know. I think you bring up some great points, but I also think we got to move on, otherwise this is going to be another hour and a half show here. But you mentioned Aaron Rodgers, so let's head over to Green Bay and see what Pride has to say about the Packers.
My old stomping grounds.
Get him.
Yeah, so this was when Biz assigned me the Packers, it was only natural for me to pick them up on them, and it's good because I believe Lambeau Field was inaugurated in 1957, and we have the only XCFL member who was alive back then to see Lambeau Field become enshrined as the field for the Green Bay Packers. So Van Flank, I know we take shots at your age, but you're coming home. You're coming home to Lambeau.
Born in the same year, questionably,
right?
Allegedly.
Yeah, we cannot confirm this, but it is rumored to be true.
So looking over this roster, it's a good roster. It's overall balanced between both sides of the ball. I know Van is very excited to get Devontae Adams going, but I didn't realize his speed was 89. The route running is great. I mean, the release is great, catching is great, but he's not going to have a deep game with Devontae Adams, and this overall Packers wide receiving core, it's really slow outside of MVS. So this is, like I said, there was going to be a theme with this division, the wide receiving core, and we're hitting on it again. It's a slow grouping. And he's going to be using one of my favorite guys, Aaron Jones, and Aaron Jones right out of the box is a stud. So he doesn't need to do anything with him as far as building him up. He just has to let him go. And I know Van's already discussed the option of what to do at quarterback, so I pose it to you guys. Van has discussed, whether to forego Rodgers and to just start with building up Love. So what do you guys do?
I'm playing Rodgers, unless he's gotten a good amount of kind of scrimmage games with Love to feel comfortable knowing that he can really with Love and win a lot of games. I wouldn't sacrifice year one. I believe his roster is so much better than the other teams in this division. He should really run away with it. I wouldn't sacrifice this year to plan out for the future. This could be different in Van's mind, because if you talk to him, he felt really iffy about the end of the Madden 20 cycle, and he felt that he kind of held on too long to some of his older players, and so maybe that's lingering in the back of his mind, and he does make a flip with Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers. I just wouldn't be that guy. I would roll with Rodgers.
Okay. It's a tough situation. I know, Van and I talk a lot, and he's had Rodgers out there. In fact, he and I have talked about Rodgers maybe playing for the Rams, as an option to take over for Goff.
One more reason why he should roll with Rodgers.
Yeah, you're going to get 3 years out of Rodgers, I will tell you this, and I don't know how far along it is, and Regan's not here, so he can't stop me from talking about it. But I do know that Nick was talking about some sort of XCFL development bonus for quarterbacks that were sitting on the bench behind veterans like Rodgers. So I don't know what that would look like. But if that's the case, then I think you start Rodgers and let Love develop behind him. But I don't know what that would look like.
You talk about a game changer.
Wow, that's interesting.
That's a game changer, yeah. So, if that comes into play, I think we definitely see Rodgers. I just, my thing is, it's so hard to develop quarterbacks. But I think Busy made a great point. This division, this first year, is up for grabs. And when I was looking at Van's schedule the other day with him, I think he could win a lot of games in the first season if he just commits to what he has. So it'll be interesting to see what decision he makes week one.
Yeah, it'll be tough. And I think with us deciding on whether the abilities will be on or off, that could influence his decision. And before we heard about this developmental QB thing, Jordan Love is very usable out of the box. All accuracies in the 80s, play actions the 82, throw on the runs 81. So if the division's open, Jordan Love is not a bad option to take that division if you want to move on from Aaron Rodgers and not stunt the development of Jordan Love for at least 2 years, because he can't trade him. He can't trade him for 2 years. So he's going to be sitting on the bench, rotting, losing his value in a trade later on, or you start him now, build him up, and he becomes he becomes the cornerstone of your franchise for the entire cycle. So it's a decision. It'll be an interesting decision to see Van do this. I don't think I'm not familiar with his quarterbacking development, but he's got a good project on his hands. He's got one of the better projects on his hands.
I felt Love was the best rookie quarterback that's in Madden this year, as far as how Madden rated them.
It looks like
look at the
really
attributes.
Does.
I felt Love was the best of the bunch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's getting all 80s out of the box. It's very generous, and it doesn't make his decision any easier about who to roll with. So good luck with that, Van. On the defensive side of the ball, the corners are good. The corner starts off with Jair Alexander, who gets his X factor this year, a significant upgrade from last season, because I think he started with Star last season. But he also started off with a better Josh Jackson, who is now relegated to almost unusable down there, as Kevin King has passed him up on the depth chart. So, but he's got a young duo, Kevin King, Jair Alexander, to stick with for a while. He's got his guy Kenny Clark back. I know he loved him last cycle after getting him from me. And then the pass rush is there. Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith off of the edge. So Van's, if the division's open, Van's in the lead. I know we're going to go over projections later on, but I would have him out ahead to start out.
I wouldn't disagree with that myself.
So, but yeah, nothing exciting about the Packers, but those are the Packers.
Sounds great. Let's head over to the Vikings and I'll cover them. We got, like I mentioned, Heath is coming in as a newcomer in our league. We saw him a little bit with the Steelers, so we got to watch him for a couple games. But really looking at this Vikings team, it's kind of an interesting team. They were one of my favorite teams. They were definitely my top 5. And like I was telling the guys here before we started, as I've reviewed them now, I'm kind of glad that I passed up on these guys too. They got 2 contracts that are just abysmal contracts. You got Kirk Cousins, who's signed up for 3 more years, and his annual salary is going to balloon to $45 million in 3 seasons. So it more than doubles over the next 3 seasons. So that was kind of interesting. And I'm not sure, maybe Heath rolls with them. I don't know what else he's going to do because none of the backups are even usable. But that's going to be a tough one to bite if you get into some salary trouble. And then the next contract that really stood out to me was Thielen. So you got 30-year-old Thielen, who is the best wide receiver on this team. But again, as Pride was saying, that kind of running theme in this division, he's 90 speed, 92 excel. So nothing outstanding there as far as speed. But 6'2" Thielen, and he's contracted for 5 more years, a big wide receiver contract. So you're stuck with this guy. Love him or hate him, he's going to be on this team for a while, and he's going to cost you some money. So those are the 2 things that stood out to me. But on the other hand, you had young 6'1" Justin Jefferson out of LSU, 21 years old, that looks like a great replacement once Thielen kind of moves out of that number 1 spot. So you'll have a good 1-2 punch there. Cousins is accurate, so he's not a horrible quarterback. You'll have a passing attack. What I did notice with Heath was he took over that Steelers team, and Tobias Trotter, was probably one of the best players in Madden 20 in the XCFL, but he just got bounced around with so many different users that his numbers didn't quite get to where they should have been. And now we'll get to see, and I guess the point I was going to make was Heath did really well with him. Mm-hmm. So we'll get to see what he does here with Dalvin Cook, he's progressing in age. He's kind of middle of the road age for running back at 25, but he's solid attributes: 92 speed, 92 excel, that change of direction, that new attribute. He's got a 95.
Yeah, that's elite there.
So he could be a big player for Heath out the box. On the defensive side of the ball, of course, you got Daniil Hunter, who is just a cornerstone of that defense for that pass rush. And then you go to what I really wanted to point out was the cornerbacks. You got 8 cornerbacks. All of them are 23 years or younger. And this is kind of one of the things that I really liked about the Vikings. The problem is that, again, there's just lack of speed across the board with these guys. The fastest one is Jeff Gladney, the rookie out of TCU, at 91 speed, and then the rest are pretty much the rest of the usable ones are in the 80s, 87, 88, 89. They're all young, so maybe you could develop him and help to hit on some of these chips and get a speed and excel boost. But if you want to try to develop cornerbacks, this is the team to do it on, because they got plenty of those young, rough cut guys. I really liked Cameron Dantzler, but EA did not do him any favors. 6'2", 21-year-old cornerback, but he's only 87 speed, and I don't think you could even use that in our league. Of course, in the division, there's not a whole lot of speed at wide receiver, so maybe he's good enough to use and do well. So
yeah, this is the right division for this quarterback corner grouping.
Yeah. Aside from that,
Yeah, feels like you can probably get away with it there.
You might be able to, but unfortunately, you have to play other divisions throughout the year too. So, if you're happy winning your division and that's it, some of us are. I know I would be. But we got to get out there and play. And I know Heath seems like an ambitious guy, so I don't think he'll be happy with just that. So he's going to be trying other things. One more last interesting point is the Vikings have, interestingly, 3/4 and 2/5. So, and they have all their own picks. So if these drafts are as deep as we've seen, he might be able to find some pretty good flyers in the middle of the draft. This first one, and he's got plenty of picks to try that. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens with these Vikings. Harrison Smith, we haven't mentioned him, but he's supposedly one of the best safeties in the league, according to PFF and some of these other Twitter statisticians that are looking for likes. I don't know. Did anything else stand out to you guys from these Vikings?
The safety duo. I know you brought up PFF, which is a bad word in chat, but PFF rated, I think Anthony Harris was the highest graded corner last season. Safety last season. And he's not bad. So you got to deal with those two in the secondary, to make up for the lack of speed on with the corners. So those two really stood out. Is that they gave Harrison, and they gave Anthony Harris a decent boost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I look at, not right away, but catches my attention, is when you start talking about the contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Cook is in his final year of his deal. So, you already have a lot of money doled out. You mentioned the big Kirk Cousins deal, the Adam Thielen deal you're locked into for 5 years. They're also locked into their tight end, Kyle Rudolph, who's 30 years old, and he's tied up for the next 4 years. And then now you've got to turn around and pay Dalvin Cook, at the end of the first season. So that could be interesting. Obviously, one of those guys is going to have to go. It'll probably be Kyle Rudolph. But that's going to be interesting,
especially
to see how
with
Irv Smith
there. Irv Smith is a really good tight end, Madden tight end. So I would probably boot Rudolph instantly.
Yeah, and you've got to do it right away. He has plenty of cap room now, but probably can't say the same in the future. So kind of take that Kyle Rudolph hit as quickly as you can, get it out the way. You're done with it 2 years into the CFM, and you can move on from there.
Yeah, that's a great point, Biz, because he's got $41 million in cap space now, but that's kind of misleading because, like you said, that's going to disappear quickly in the next 2 seasons. So it's not like you could just go out and hire another superstar and pick up another superstar right now, because you're not going to have that room a year or 2 from now. So if you're playing the salary cap game, you need to be looking 1 or 2 seasons ahead at where you're going. And if you're only looking at this season, you're going to find yourself in trouble in cap. So Vikings could be a little bit of a trap there in as far as cap. Let's move on to the Lions. Of course, Regan is missing, so the three of us could cover them. Anything that stands out to you guys for the Lions as we look at them? Sparty will be running his favorite team in the Detroit Lions. What do you guys like there?
It's got to be Okuda.
That's a great point, right?
Yeah, I think you can start at the cornerback position. So obviously Okuda is going to be the guy that you really want to build around. You should slide him right into the starting role, but they have two other good cornerbacks there. So, that right there, again, when you can force turnovers, you're going to be in a lot of ball games. I think that the corner trio that they have will allow them to be in a lot of ball games. Justin Coleman's got some pretty good respect on his name in this version. 85 overall. Good zone, good man, right? 86, 85. So I think that's really going to boost them. It's not fast, 88 speed, but you can you can hide one corner. If you have one corner that's slow, you can hide him. You should be able to scheme your way around putting him in positions to succeed. And then you have Desmond Trufant, and those are 85 and 84 overall. Trufant has a little bit better speed at 91, and then you get to Jeff Okuda. And so I really like their cornerback trio.
I agree with that.
Yeah, it's a really good trio, and it could get to a point where if you need help, at other positions, Desmond Trufant's is not a bad piece to hang out there.
One of the things that I really like, and last year one of the moves that I regret not making is T.J. Hawkinson was out there early on in Madden 20, and I had an opportunity to go after him, and I kind of passed on it, and then I found myself needing a tight end. And so I think it's funny to say it, but I think T.J. Hawkinson in this offense, if he plays like he did, you got he's 6'5", so he's a big, reliable receiver there for you, and 23 years old, so he's got plenty of time to still develop. I know some of the Lions fans out there, Nick particularly, will hate hearing about Okuda and Hawkinson both. So, they're not going to be thrilled with that, but he was a player that was a difference maker on offense, and we saw that with VBD as he progressed through some of his successful seasons.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys do with Matt Stafford?
The best I can say is bench him and hope he retires.
But what's the answer?
Best
then?
I got.
If you're not going to play Stafford, what are you going to do? Play Chase Daniel?
Yeah, that's tough. The thing Stafford has going for him is that 94 throw power, which can be a big difference maker. And his accuracies are still in the mid 80s. It's still good. He's still Madden good. He can still pad stats with that, with those attributes. And Galladay's a stud. He's not fast, but his route running and catching is just is elite. So
yeah.
And then if you're going to keep Galladay and Hawkinson with Stafford, that's deadly in Madden.
So you think you can roll with them and put together something solid in these first two seasons?
You might have no choice.
Yeah. There's going to be too many guys going after quarterbacks. I mean, we may have Sparty be one of the top teams looking at whoever the best quarterback in the draft is in that first draft. Because he's going to have to find an answer quick with Stafford at 32 years old. I mean, he may last another 3 or 4 years. Let's see what's left on his contract.
Yeah, he's under a 3-year deal. 3-year deals. 3 years left.
3 years left. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got 3 years with him. But I think, again, this may be one of those deals where maybe we see that bench quarterback getting some sort of development bump. So he picks up his, drafts a quarterback and sits him behind Stafford for a season or two and then rolls with him. That development bump that we're kind of floating out there, I'd love to see it. I don't know. Again, I don't know how it's going to look, but I think that'd be a game changer for the league and a much needed development boost for quarterbacks as we, if you see them drop off and there's no real way to develop them properly. So we may see Sparty take advantage of that with a drafted quarterback sooner than later, if that comes to be true.
So two things on this quarterback situation. I felt there were quite a few really, really good quarterbacks at the end of our cycle last year. So I'm wondering what's that driving force behind it. It could be to keep the name, the real NFL players in the game long. If people feel that they can develop a quarterback behind their starting quarterback already, that could be interesting. I like that, dynamic of it. But then I have this question for the Lions. Who else could he roll with? I wonder if Jacob Eason from the Colts could be in play here. I've already heard Sean make mention of moving Eason and kind of running with Brissett. I wonder if Eason could be in play for Detroit here.
That is a really interesting point, because after all of us kind of agreed that you got to roll with Eason if you're the Colts, Sean's not sold on that idea, and he's kind of, like you said, leaning towards Brissett from the start. So he could probably get some good value from Eason in a trade, and again, that may be someone, Sparty may be someone that looks into that and says, okay, I'll roll with Eason and see how he does if he has guys like Galladay and Hawkinson on the other side of the ball, catching the ball for him.
If you had told me that there was going to be an arms race for Jacob Eason for Madden 21, I would have never believed you.
Well, I guess we'll see.
I mean, because you got
one of the better
Bears.
rookies, right?
Yeah.
He's not one of the better rookies, but he's one of the better rookies that is available to trade for, because we can't acquire the first two rounds, which is removing the really good quarterbacks. So I think he's really the best available rookie quarterback. I think that's what's going to drive up that market value there for Sean and Indy.
Unless you want to trade for that bum in Philly.
Yeah.
I would go get him in a heartbeat.
I think we've covered the Lions pretty good. So let's get into some predictions. What do you think, and this is kind of just open to both of you. Who do we think is going to lead this division the first year? And then as we go through a couple seasons, where do we think any of these guys is just kind of own this division, or do we see each of these guys win the division once? Any predictions there?
I would like
got
to.
Van. I mostly got Van. I know Van was in a tough spot this last cycle with being in Jack's division, but Van consistently had found success, was consistently in the playoffs or on a playoff run. He's got a great roster, so everything's lined up for him. He's a solid user. He may quick snap me a few too many times, but that's okay. But for me, it's Van, and I think Van can consistently win this division year in year out.
I would love to answer this question in a week. Here's my thought process. I honestly feel it should be Van. I feel like Van, from my experience, is the better gamer. I'm gonna go ahead and say this shamelessly. I guess kind of with tears in my eyes. The first time that I played Van, we're talking about like a decade ago. Sorry, put us on blast for our age, but Van beat me so bad, I literally quit a league. Like I was like, I'm gone. I can't do this. I'm leaving. I'm never playing this guy again. I met up with him in D-Who, and literally I avoided him for our first two straight games. He was like, "You want to play?" I was like, "Nah, I got something to do." So I personally have a lot of respect for Van's skill set. So I think it should be Van. However, this Madden seems to be a different play style, and maybe it's got inside of Van's head. So I wish I could answer this in a week. Is if Van's head is right about this game going into it, I'm saying give me Van. If it's not, if he's still feeling kind of iffy about the game, not super satisfied, I'm going to go with the newcomer and go with Heath.
Well,
So that's my answer.
I could tell you why Van's head was not right when you played him yesterday. Because before you played him, I beat him 48-16. So anybody that's losing to me 48-16, their head's not going to be right. But the alternative to that is, like you, I know Van well. I've played him more than anybody else by far. He and I have played each other hundreds of times over the last 10 years. And, we always seem to end up in the same division or very close to each other. We scrimmage a lot. So I know Van's play style better than anyone else. So you kind of it's one of those things where you take our games and you throw them out the window because, the skill set kind of balances out when you know each other so well. But I know he did not like taking that loss very well. And so I think that's what threw him off a little bit. He's not feeling too good about that, but he'll come back around. He's as competitive, as anyone else. And I agree. He's a great gamer, and he'll figure it out and come back strong. I think he's going to win a bunch of games season 1 if he commits to this roster. That said, I don't think we can just ignore Hammer. I mean, Hammer put together, I don't know that he's got the team season 1, but he proved that he could find some gems, and those gems won him games, many, many games. So I think if he can find those guys again, he will be a threat to this division for sure.
Yeah, I think when you start talking long term, season 3, 4, I think Hammer's name really should come into play at that point. I just don't think that roster, unless he finds something to do with the offense. While I think the defense is great, I just think the offense, and based off of what you mentioned earlier with struggling with, lesser wide receivers, I think it's going to be tough for him to compete if that remains true this cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if he could turn that roster around on the offense side of the ball, he'll throw his name into the hat for the division.
It's true. I think another one too is Sparty. Sparty is he's tough to figure out because he seems to always be playing with these teams or in divisions that just put him in a rough spot. But is there anyone that gave Jack, one of the best teams in the league, a harder time than Sparty last year? I mean, I think
you're right. Yeah,
he beat him a few times. So
he's capable.
A good player.
Yeah.
He's a good player, and I think he's in a division where he's going to match up well with all of these guys. The same thing with Heath. I mean, I think we saw Heath come in, and we have a very small sample size with him, but he has some. The one that stands out to me is he beat Tosh once.
Yeah.
And yes. Tosh was kind of distracted, in this final season, but still, a win is a win. So to me, that right there puts you up there with Van, Sparty, and Hammer. So I think this is going to be a fun division to watch. I wouldn't be surprised if each one of these guys takes a division title at least once next cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is why they ended up at this, so early in the division reveal, is not so much because they don't have the capability of beating people, but because you really can't look at it and say these guys are good, but these two are really going to dominate this division. And I think that when you kind of look at them, you don't get that feeling. So you kind of look at them and say, can we really put them high in this division ranking? But they're really good players. I haven't had an opportunity to play Sparty very much, but these aren't people that I would walk in and say, all right, this is a win for me, each week that I turn around and have to play them.
No, it's going to be a good battle. So this will be a fun one to watch, and I'm just looking at schedules here. So week 1, Packers, Vikings. So they're going to get to it right away. It'll be interesting to see some of these moves. I guess what I'll ask, if you guys knowing what you know now, had to choose one of these teams to be the team that was going to be yours for the cycle, which team would you choose? If you had to take over one of these rosters.
The Packers. Ooh, that hurts coming out of my mouth. Ugh. Nah, I couldn't. Just don't know. Yeah, the Packers. The Packers.
It's the
What do you
Vikings
think,
for
Brian?
me. Yeah, I like their draft. I'm a big fan of Dalvin Cook. It just looked like outside of the quarterback position. It looked like a fun roster to play with, but also build for the long term. You hit on those cornerbacks, and that's a great project. And having, and they're not bad out of the box. So that was one of the funner teams that I considered.
I agree. I really like the Packers myself. I hate weather games though, and they were really high on my list until the day of the team selection. That morning of, I went and played, turned on the snow and played in Green Bay, and I was like, nope, I cannot handle this. And they got crossed off of my list, So if I was going to take a team in the North, I would definitely choose the Vikings myself. Even though I said I would pass up on them, but the project there with the cornerbacks, I think that would be a fun project, and we've seen the proof that you could develop cornerbacks. So, One last question for you guys, and then we'll kind of wrap it up since we're getting pretty long here. Is the question we've kind of been popping each show: do any of these guys get to a bowl, or do any of these guys win one? What do you guys think?
I think Van could early get to a bowl, and he's always said this. You got to get in early before Jack, Tosh, Nick, Kylo all figure it out. Van could. I think Van could get to one, whether he wins it or not. I don't know. It just depends how his carpal tunnel's feeling that day.
What do you think, Biz?
I like the Van thought process. Again, I'm going to go back to how does Van feel. I do believe that early in the cycle, he's got one of the better teams in the league, and that's going to put him in a position to make a Super Bowl run early in the process. And while some of these other guys, they may put, again, a surprising run together like you guys, talk about so many times with Boone. But I'm extremely curious about Heath coming into the league, being fairly new, getting a win against Tosh should put the entire league on notice, right? Like that type of win, that he was within 10 games, right? Like,
yeah,
he hadn't even done a whole season. So we should be looking at that saying, that was an impressive win.
And Heath is in another league, right? So it's not like he has no CFM experience.
He knows how to play, yeah. I forget which league he's in, but he's been around. He knows.
Yeah. But some of these CFM defensive rules, as far as player movement, is really different in comparison to other leagues. And for me personally, that was and is still a huge learning curve. And the fact that he was able to really put himself while trying to tackle that adjustment and get a win against Tosh is just impressive to me. I'm interested to see how it plays out.
Well, it should be fun to watch. I just throw my opinion out there. I mean, we saw Van get to the Super Bowl. I believe he lost to Tosh with the Cowboys last cycle. So he's proven himself capable. I think he gets his head right, commits to this team, and like Pride said, I think you get there early before some of the other teams have built some of these monster, beasts of teams, and you do it while most teams are still stock, and it's a little bit easier playoff road to get there. I mean, the NFC, I think we know the AFC is just going to be a gauntlet once you get to the playoffs. The NFC, I'm not going to say that it's a lot softer once you get to the playoffs, but you're not going to have the same level of players there just week after week after week. You're going to have to get 3 big wins in a row to get there and win it. So I think Van could get there. I really do, if he gets his head on straight. And that's what I think the point Busy was making is, he needs. And this is Van. He gets excited. He takes losses hard, but he'll figure it out. And I think we see him with double-digit wins the first season, and I think he takes the division title. So he'll get a chance to prove himself.
Mm-hmm. No pressure.
Would not surprise me.
All right. Well, any final comments before we wrap it up, guys?
No. Thanks for again for doing this, Ace, and good job by you guys for audibling with Regan no showing.
Yeah.
I can't say I'm surprised with our buddy Regan. Just for everyone listening, he had sent us a message, and he was saying, I'm kind of down on it on the list at work and all this. I need to start early, so we adjusted a half hour earlier, and the guy still doesn't show up. But this is Regan. This is the Regan we know. Just typical kids these days. So
give him crap, league.
Wretched Regan.
Go get him.
Listen, wretched Regan. As soon as I get off this line, I'm shooting Nick a quick message, asking him if he can change his name in the chat. That's how this is going to happen.
So maybe before we wrap up, one more question. What division do we think we're going to do next? I mean, I'd throw it out to the league again and say, hit us up if you want something, holler at us. Let us know what you want us to cover. I mean, we'll eventually get to everything, but which one do you want to do next? And do you guys have any preference?
I kind of want to do the NFC South.
Ooh, that'll be fun.
Yeah,
that'll be fun.
I want to hit them next, and maybe I get Brian. I don't know. Maybe.
Is that your request?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay.
No debate from me.
My best friend there.
Your best friend Brian. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if he's got this podcast on block just because you're on it.
I don't know what's going on with this Brian Pride conversation, so I'm gonna back out.
I don't either.
Okay. Well, thanks for participating, guys. It's been a great night again. I'll put together the production for this, and we'll get it up. And thanks for listening, all you guys out there, XCFL. Thanks for listening. We're another day closer to getting this cycle started, so it should be fun. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate everyone.
All right, y'all.